add to the value of it. The value is the open space. You go from New York City with the Central Park, you go anywhere, the big pride issue of almost every city, small or large, is the fact that they have some open space. It's not all developed completely. Green has value. Another development in that area does not enhance the value of what we have now. It may actually even depreciate some of the value of the houses that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come to the podium, state your name. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Sherry Lenora. I oppose the development of the West Henry project. I have from the very beginning. I first of all want to commend the two citizens who have put a tremendous amount of time and work into this proposal that they're bringing forth. However, I do not think that it fulfills the best and highest use of this property. I feel the city needs to reserve this property for future expansion. Last time we had 450 signatures on a petition saying, please keep this property in reserve. We have many needs in this community, and they are not for additional walking areas or parks. We have needs for brick and mortar facilities. We need a senior center. We need a civic center that will serve all of Punta Gorda, not just PGI. We need facilities for youth. We need pickleball courts. We need all sorts of things. And I do not think that we need to spend the money or give the land away to develop another walking park. We have currently, according to city estimations, a 60-year supply of vacant land to build homes on. Why do we have to put homes on this particular piece of property? This borders the linear park, the history park, the proposed site of the library, and I see this as a place for a future community center of some sort of complex that will serve the citizens of Punta Gorda, not another walking park. I think that last time we put this proposal was brought before the community, there was no $1 million valuation set for the sale of this property. I think that Punta Gorda under this proposal is being very short, it's being slighted greatly. We really I don't see $1 million worth of improvements being done to this property in exchange for giving it away to a developer. We have a few bocce ball courts, we have some walking parks, we have some retention ponds. We're moving the dog park, again, considering that, which I think is not a good idea. And so I would urge the council, please, let's keep this property in reserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paul Holmes. I've lived for 15 years on Punta Gorda Isles. As an American who was born and spent most of his life in England, I understand the true meaning of the word heritage. The beautiful forests and national parks of Britain were not saved by environmentalists. They were selfishly saved by the nobility who wanted them so they could hunt and shoot game. But today they belong to the people. They're open to all for their enjoyment, and they always will be. They are part of every Englishman's heritage. Things were very different in the United States. It was a great country, mostly unspoiled, in its natural state when it was discovered. So it didn't matter if small areas of land were lost. But today, in towns like Punta Gorda, what little green space is left needs to be protected. The parcel of land we're discussing today is precious, extremely precious, and it is irreplaceable. In the centre of the city, it needs to be improved, preserved, and open to the citizens of Punta Gorda forever. As founder and president of an environmental communication portal known as the Environmental Voice of Southwest Florida, or EcoVoice for short, I'm constantly reminded that one cannot go back. It's impossible to change the decision when the property has already been destroyed. It is absolutely unthinkable that the potential beauty and public use of this property may be given up so that 2 or 3 people may make a lot of money. I would suggest that our town councillor resists the urge to make a terrible mistake. one that cannot be reversed, and one that is forever. I'm joining my fellow citizens in asking that you protect this important and irreplaceable piece of land for the use and appreciation of the citizens of our town. Also, I ask you to make the decision permanent, unlike the last time. Every member of this council knows in their heart that this is the correct thing to do, and anything else will be a decision they will be ashamed of for the rest of their lives. They will have destroyed a small part of the heritage of Punta Gorda forever, and that is inexcusable.
Thank you.
Good morning, Gary Skillicorn, private citizen, Punta Gorda. I'd like to first applaud the efforts of the two Julies for putting together such an impressive concept plan. Considerable personal effort went into it. I suspect it was a last-ditch effort to at least save some of the land from the bulldozers. I appreciate her initiative, and when making so many compromises, no one is a winner. It was a thankless job to fit 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. It is clear that the developer was allocated the sweet spot of the property, even at the expense of relocating the hounds of Henry Dog Park near the wastewater treatment facility with its objectionable odor. So what does the community gain from this? The proposed graphics are certainly very attractive, like a fairyland. But all I really see are walking paths and benches that largely serve the developer. Even forming the retention pond serves the benefit of the developer with fill dirt. Somebody tell me what else the city is gaining from this. The bocce ball court, the band shell along Olympia are certainly no bargain, with road traffic and no parking. Surely there are better uses for this land downstream. Further, it appears that the new library and history park will be surrounded by residential lots with no room for growth. The proposal even suggests the city donate the land to the developer for building the walkways and moving the dog park. Give me a break. The council decision of last October was to leave the city-owned land as open space, and yet some council members wanted to keep an option open. A decision was made, but here we are again today. The majority of council members saw the vision that the land had potential to meet future needs of the community and declined to sell to the developer, to the relief of hundreds of Punta Gorda voters. We now have two new council members that can choose to support a vision for the future, or not. As an example of potential future needs, with a recent groundbreaking for the Marriott Hotel at Marketplace, it's not hard to see that the balance of that property will soon be gone. Will the dozens of activities currently conducted at the Marketplace, the circus, Halloween Fest, water show, car shows, boat shows, Funk Fest, block party, etc., be relocated to Lashley or Gilchrist parks? Those parks have their own challenges. Think out of the box. Maybe the city could even gain rental revenue from the Henry Street property for a while. Think to the future. What about a senior center or a city civic association? I agree with the council's last decision to maintain it as open space. Let's not do another do-over. I remind you, council, voters do have a memory. Thank you.
Thank you. No applause, please. We need to get through this meeting as fast as possible. So if anybody else would like to comment, now would be the time. We're ready to move on. Okay, seeing none, we will move into budget extension of the term contract with Wells Fargo Bank.
We just need another extension so we can rebid it, so we can get some competitive bids with all the banks. The last bidding process didn't quite work out. Some banks had to get rejected, didn't fill out the right work. So we just need a another extension, and we will rebid it and bring to you another banking contract.
You want a motion?
We need a
Motion?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve the extension with Wells Fargo Bank. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. And next, we have the 2018 budget status update for the utilities operation and 5-year capital improvement program.
Good morning, Sharon Nippenberg, Controller again. For this section, we're going to discuss the utilities budget, and Tom will be here to assist me. He will answer all of the detail questions. We're going to start with the utilities pro forma itself. We've been looking at this for many years closely because, of course, we wanted to make sure that we had adequate revenues to fund the development of the reverse osmosis plant. This is a very abbreviated one showing the total revenues, operating expenditures, transfers. What you do see in here now is the new debt service, which will be coming to you at the next meeting. We're actually engaged working with the state right now on the additional revolving loan at a 1.34% interest rate that we plan to lock before the end of the month. So this is the revised debt. In year 1, 2018, that's just the first year debt on the debt we've already incurred for the deep well. In 2019, it's the combined debt. So that will be the debt on the overall plant. And that will go out for 20 years.
And that is the city's portion.
That is the entire debt, and that funds the city's 50% share
Okay.
of the project, yes. Yes. The second line, the transfer to the SRF, which is the state revolving fund reserve, they require us to reserve 1 full year of debt payments. So that's building up the reserve for that.
And that's their requirement.
It's a requirement, yes. And if you'll recall, we had that same requirement when we had bonds. We had an additional requirement when we had bonds, which was to maintain a $1.5 million R&R replacement program. We have, this council agreed very judiciously to maintain that. And it's at the bottom of the page, you see an R&R capital reserve of 1.5 million. So that's a second level of protection. That is not used to pay debt service. That would be used if there were anything within the utility system that unexpectedly needed to be replaced. So that would be generally like a major water line break, a major pump loss, and we have seen those over the last couple of years. So we feel comfortable to have that in place. Is there anything else that you would like to ask on this page?
So Sharon, that 1.5 million, if we spend out of that, the rest carries over and then we replenish it to 1.5 million?
Yes, we
Okay.
would want to do that, absolutely. And this is in addition to other levels of funding that we'll go into. What you see here is at the beginning of 18, we have the 7.9 reserve, but ending of the year, you see 3.5. And the reason for that is we are proposing to cash fund $3.9 million of the RO plant. That's the increase that we expected from this new number the engineers are giving us. The other 3.9 million, we are asking SwiftMud to contribute. And the indications are, Tom?
Well, they certainly, the Water Management District gets more nervous with projects not being on schedule than cost overrun. And they understand with our project that for all intents and purposes, the original engineer's estimate of cost is 10 years old, and they know things are going up. And that will be very much considered once as part of the third-party review. And once we have a final CMAR maximum price.
So we will be using as much of the reserves as is prudent to cash fund rather than finance. We are also keeping in mind that we are in the process of examining the bids for the the AMI system for advanced meter reading system, and we don't know the price tag for that yet. What's in the assumptions right now is $2.5 million. So should that need go higher, we'll either look to the reserves or we will use less cash on the RO plant and finance slightly higher. All of these numbers sort of take that into consideration, that we're still waiting for our CMAR to go out and get his final bids for all of his subs. So do we expect that $40 million number to be accurate? We certainly hope so. But if it's not, we still have some flexibility here. So if we can, Kristen, just move to the assumptions. We have an ordinance in place right now that allowed for 3 years of rate increases. There was a rate increase in 16 and in 17. There is one in place for 18. Staff recommended to the Utility Advisory Board that we could delay indefinitely the 4% rate increase for 2018. The pro forma that you're looking at does not include a 4% increase this coming fall. It will take an action of council to revise the ordinance and delay indefinitely that additional 4% increase. We believe that we have been very, very conservative in estimating the revenues. So even though this year to date, we've brought in an additional $1.3 million in excess of what was budgeted, we understand it was a drought year and that people were very actively compensating for the loss of water, and they wanted to keep their lawns green. In next year's budget, we are not expecting a repeat of that. In fact, effective yesterday, June 5th, we are now in a 1-day watering restriction. And the last time that was imposed upon us, they kept it in place for 2.5 years. So
I think that worked, though. The faucets came on.
We're only estimating a 1% growth. Right now, we're experiencing 2% growth. So our estimates on revenues are conservative. We are comfortable with the level of reserves we currently have. We can go through the rest of the presentation and then come back to a discussion of if you would like to accept the recommendation from the Utility Advisory Board.
Does that sound okay?
Okay. So we have some increases in operations, and again, if you would like to go into details, I'll let Tom take over. But basically, right now, we're looking at an increase in full-time equivalents for personnel of 1.5. We are in need of a SCADA analyst for the water treatment plant. This is in direct conjunction with building an RO plant. And they believe that getting this person on board while the plant is being built makes the most sense. So they will be directly involved in the decision-making of how best to structure all those finite details. And then we are in need of a part-time clerk out at the wastewater treatment plant. Then in 2019, we will propose to add an additional full-time equivalent, and that will be an engineering technician. It's a position that they had in the past when we were very actively under construction in the utilities field. We're back there again, and we are in great need right now to GIS map everything so that we know when there's any road overlays, any PUDs going in, we know exactly where all of our lines are. We have a lot of memory loss that will, when people retire, there's certain people we call on right now, and they just go, oh, the line is there. So we need it on a map. The second one is, we've already talked about the plant. I won't go into that again. We have a continued use of current revenue and operating reserves to fund our 5-year CIP. This year, we're going to cover both in the one meeting rather than just talk about operations and then talk about CIP. But it's important to know that one of the city's policies is through our current rates to fund $1.1 million of ongoing CIP projects in cash and not finance them. That made all the sense to know that when you have aging lines and aging pumps, that it makes more sense to plan on a cash replacement of them. We also have, in 2017, we're finally at the point where we were comfortable. We've been carrying over a lot of financing projects for you. We were comfortable in 17 to finally say, we will not finance the filtration plant. It was the filtration project. It was the very last one that we were afraid of using our reserves in case we needed them for RO. So you see that in 17, we're telling you all those old projects that are now complete, we will not finance any of them. We're going to use $1 million of our current revenues and reserves to eliminate any need for financing except for the RO plant. And then, of course, the automatic meter reading project we've already discussed. Wanted to just go over specifically the reserves so that everyone's aware that right now we do have policies. The first one that we established was a minimum of a $3 million operating reserve. And that's a little different than the rest of the funds of the city, where right now we have a 7.5% reserve. And that was because of all the unknowns and all the volatility of the plan. So I won't go into that unless there are questions. We already talked about the $1.5 million R&R capital reserve. And we talked about the establishing the required state revolving loan reserve. And the last one, and the Utility Advisory Board has been asking me this one for several years, we have finally, let's say, made it official that $1.1 million that we put in each year, if it is not spent that year, it will go into its own reserve in the capital projects fund. And then next year, we will fund the appropriate 1.1. And that way, if a project overruns, if something else comes in that's necessary, we're not running to the operating reserves to cover it. The capital project fund has its own reserve. We know that when we look at that fund, you're going to see out in the 5th year a need to begin identifying how best to deal with an aging wastewater treatment plant. We've put that one on the back burner because we had to deal with RO first. So that's a policy that we've all talked about, and now we're asking you to make that an official policy of the city as well. So when we get to the pro forma, you'll see what that means. This capital outlay is the small things. This is the rolling stock. This is the small pumps and blowers within the plants themselves. These are not major ticket items. We had addressed the need of an ongoing $600,000 and adding $50,000 annually. At this point in time, staff is comfortable leveling that off at $700,000. As you can see in 2018, there's a lot more specific projects because it's coming up right away. There's only $97,000 that's unspecified at this point. In some of the outer years, you see the unspecified much larger. But this is very like what we do in the general fund. And I'm going to stop at that point. Before we move into the construction fund, if there are any questions on the operations of the utility system, Tom's available to answer questions.
Yes, sir. Okay. I'm probably going to ask questions I think I already know the answers to, but I'd like the public to be aware of it.
Okay.
As we complete the reverse osmosis plant, presently we're purchasing about 500,000 gallons of water a day to fulfill our shortfall in our present capacity. Is that correct?
I have to double check this morning, but I think we
Approximately.
stopped doing that on Monday, but yes.
Awesome. Okay,
For all
up until
intents and
up until
purposes.
recently we were.
Yes, yes.
Because of the drought issue.
Yes,
Obviously,
yes.
we've had a change in the drought.
Yes.
So we are not taking into consideration of a drought for next year, but I'm just going to go further. When we do have a drought, we still will come under the restrictions of SWIFT-MUD for our water restrictions,
Absolutely.
even though we have the capacity, which would mean this is that instead of importing 500,000 gallons, we would be exporting water. Is that correct?
That would be wonderful. And it was actually, the original interconnect was set up to do exactly that, for us to fulfill a gap in the water supply for the Peace River Authority of 3 million gallons a day.
So the financial projections that we're seeing does not take that into account. Is that correct?
Does not. I mean, Sharon's aware of it because of.
Neutral.
Yeah.
We're neutral.
We're
Yeah, you're
revenue
neutral.
neutral
That's my point.
on that
I'm
issue.
just making a
Yes.
point of how conservative these numbers are.
Yes,
And
yes.
upon completion of this RO plant, what an enviable position our little city of Punta Gorda is going to be in.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, we certainly do become, and that's an important observation that I think is sometimes overlooked. We become a lot more drought resistant with a groundwater source and a surface water source than we were historically. So that was one of the factors in doing the project we're doing.
And we protect ourselves from situations if there's an algae bloom that can affect our capacities and those types of.
That's
So it'll
absolutely
become
correct.
even more seamless for us.
Yes.
One more question is regarding the waste treatment plant and the potential that we're going to have to deal with that in the future. It's my understanding that's not because of a capacity issue, but basically an age issue. Is that
No,
correct?
it's actually both.
It is.
In the state of Florida, once you start approaching 70% of your permitted capacity, DEP requires that you develop a design to deal with expanding the facility. We're right now at about 62% of design capacity for that facility. So in the next few years, we're going to be approaching that 70% capacity trigger that requires us to design for the future expansion. So it's not too early to start looking at what our next step, our next increment is going to be out there. In addition to that, that's a 1985 facility. So you have both of those factors going on.
And that's really the point I was getting to, because now that we're going to have this new RO plant, it's also good to have the back end also kind of in balance, so that you can take it in, but you also have a place
Right,
to put it when
right.
you're done with it. And
Absolutely.
I just wanted to kind of put that out for the record for the.
And I've been working
population.
with Sharon and Dave for several years now. We've been aware of this. This was anticipated in Burton's rate analysis. We
correct.
plugged dollars in several years ago in anticipation of that.
Yes.
So it's not, I mean, it's something new in terms of understanding what we're doing and why we're doing it, but it's not new to us in terms of the dollars.
Right. I just want to thank you guys all for your proactiveness and the way you go through your thought process. Thank you very much.
Sharon lays awake at night thinking of hard questions to ask about the what-ifs, and she gets the credit for that.
Okay.
Tom always has the
So
answer.
Tom, with the new force main down Jones Loop, what does that do to our capacity?
It depends on how much gets built out there. It could certainly speed up pushing against the 70%. Absolutely. If, you know, all of us saw the movie, if you build it, they will come scenario happens, that's good. But that's also good because impact fees are what's going to pay for the plant expansion.
Because there's already a hotel and other things.
Right, yeah. Right now, we can certainly handle what
Right.
we know's on the books. We factor that in. When we do long-range planning, when we do the wastewater master plan, we look at build-out scenarios with certain densities, so.
Jahan?
I wanted to ask your opinion on this. Being that we're talking about this in that area, we say as a group, we pretty much do city planning based on whether people annex into the city or not. But I was wondering what you thought about more of a planned growth from the standpoint, let's say Piper Road area, because like being that this is going to be worked on, and you know some people in the county were asking would we consider to put the sewage in now, being that that area is probably going to be a growth area for us, just you know either Western Michigan airport, everything like that. I guess what are your thoughts about that? About us going ahead and putting sewer into that area, which likely would, even if people weren't to commit now, likely that would be part of the city, let's say in the next 10 years, 15 years. Or so.
Well, it has always been the policy of the city council and many, many cities in the state of Florida, and this is a policy issue. You have to tell me what you want. That we don't install sewers, the developers install sewers, and that becomes part of the cost of the land. The force main that we're putting in does not take one septic tank offline, and that's another issue that will be coming up later on. And that's strictly a policy issue. And I'm gonna let the city manager weigh in. If it's your wish and you think you wanna put gravity sewer in there, we can certainly do that, and we can come up with a cost to do
I can weigh in. I mean, basically what we're talking about is Piper Road. And the county is getting ready to extend Piper Road to 17 as part of the sales tax project. If the properties along there go along with our policy and they want a voluntary annex in whenever they become contiguous, whenever that might be, it would be my recommendation that we put it in along with the road project, because we'll eventually have more customers. It's our utility area, and those properties will eventually be in the city at some point in time. It could be 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. But that would be the recommendation. If the developer along the property owners along that road want to put their sewer in on their own, they can certainly welcome to do so. And they can get paid back over time, some of it, with connection fees through a line extension agreement. We've done that before.
In fact, one exists for that particular project that we're talking about, and it's about a $400,000 force main project that would allow them to recover the impact fees as people connect to that. Now, the entity I don't think exists anymore, but that option is certainly available to any developer, anybody that wishes to put lines in the city.
See, I asked the question only because this is kind of one of those, if we build it, they will come things. On one level, I think growth is going out there where we can, kind of like, if we build it, we'll have the growth out there, where if we don't, I don't know if the particular landowners at this moment are going to want to do that. And so it's one of those things, what would be more beneficial to the city in the long run, us going ahead and having that taken care of or not? And that's kind of more the question.
I think I'm with Howard. If they're willing to sign the pre-annexation agreement, I would definitely consider it, but what are we talking? We don't know if it's 400,000, 800,000. I mean,
yeah.
first of all, we need to know that they want to sign the agreement. And second of all, we need to know how much is it going to cost, because it's not going to help the capacity of our system. It's going to help those specific properties. And that's, I think, where there is a line for me.
That's why you've had the policy that you've
Yeah.
had. Yeah.
There is a line for me there that, you know, if we want to benefit property owners, then that's a decision that we need to make. The conversations are taking place, I can tell you that,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, we have those in our office almost on a daily basis, and we tell the applicant or the developer, if you will, what the policy has been, what, you know, the history has been, and then we encourage them to open the discussions.
And just on the financial side of it, you know, we do a 10-year pro forma for utilities. You only see a 5, we do a 10, because I need to know what's in the 6th year, what's in the 7th year. We need to plan that far ahead. And your policies really matter. Up until now, I don't have to be overly concerned about all the vacant land, because if that developer wants to develop, he has to build the system and donate it to the city. And then, yes, we can help him recoup his costs for all the other people that connect to it. If that policy were to change, we would have to think very long and hard about how we can be concerned about the volatility of when there's growth and construction and when there's not, and there's no impact fees coming in. So this one little $1.5 million project came at a good time. We had the funds to do it. The impact fees are there. And when we are funding that 100% with impact fees, we are not using the current users' rates to fund that. And I think that's the line that the mayor has been
Yes.
talking about.
For the audience, that's the Jones Loop force main that's under design right now.
Well, the
Anyway.
major distinction is that we need it for our capacity.
Yeah, we have issues at
We have
lift station
issues.
60 and 61 where we can't, in fact, we were working with a consultant yesterday. We have tight flows in that area that will help. We need to do that, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, no more questions on operations. We'll just move into Utilities Construction Fund. This is very similar to the general fund's 5-year capital improvement plan. And most importantly, what you see in 2018 is the balance of the funding that we need to finish what's now estimated to be the $40 million RO project. And then the revenue sources. So you have the Swift Mud grant, the balance of the 3.9 million that we're asking for from them. The transfers in from the operations, which is 3.9 of cash funding, and then all the normal projects. Transfers in from water impacts and sewer impacts. Those are for the growth-related projects. And Tom's going to go into the detail of what those projects are. The rest of the years, you see transfers coming in from the sewer system impacts, and that is specifically to begin looking at what we're going to need for the wastewater treatment plant. In the last years, you see the $1 million. That is a placeholder. We have no idea whether it's 500,000 or 5 million. So $1 million was what we were comfortable with to start with, as a placeholder for what will come out of the engineering studies and what is approved by the state of Florida that we'll be allowed to do. Are there any questions on the pro forma itself? At the very bottom, just to point out to you, that's the new reserve of the $1.1 million being funded. These are all, this is the prior years. This would be 15, 16, and 17. That's the amount of money we did not spend or do not think we'll spend by the end of 17. That will carry forward until some point in time where it's needed and that we won't have to go back to the operating fund to grab additional funds. Kristen? Okay, Tom, this is the actual detail of the 5-year CIP.
And with your permission, rather than go line item by line item, I'm just going to do a broad brush by category, and then if you have a specific question or need additional information, certainly please ask. The recurring 1.12 million Sharon talked about, that's a recurring R&R fund that we do the projects listed below that, give you an idea of the types of projects: gravity sewer line replacement, lift station, inflow, I&I inflow and infiltration abatement, studies, as well as repairs, renew and replacement projects of different things. We have each of the water and wastewater divisions develop those budgets every year. I'll switch to the next. Admin, we have the two big admin projects in FY 2018. We have the GIS that kicks off. This is actually something that the city manager and I have been working on for quite some time. We understand and know, and with Johnny Lloyd's retirement, the need for mapping everything in a GIS level within the city. It was a goal of mine when I started here 15 years ago, and we're finally, I think, going to make some real progress in the next couple of years. To do that, we need to bring a consultant on board and lay the base map and the groundwork out and work with our IT department to have it in a form that they can support and use and train on and train us on. So we're going to kick that off by doing a consultant layer of that, and then, as Sharon talked about in 2019, filling that vacant engineering tech position that's been vacant for about 7 or 8 years now, with one of their functions populating the GIS database as well as supporting IT with that GIS database. And the other is the AMR AMI. There's several of us on the committee in the room today. We met yesterday and shortlisted for presentations for June the 27th, I believe it is. 29th. We moved it to 29th. So that's coming up.
Vendors?
Yes.
Okay.
4 vendors. We're going to shortlist 3, but there were only 4 qualified vendors. So we're going to hear from all of them. This is too big and too important a project to miss something. So we're set aside a couple of days to do that on June the 29th. Wastewater projects, you can see these are related to the wastewater treatment plant. These are specific projects that we earmarked in the CIP categories, and you can see what is funded. We're doing quite a bit in 2018 with tank coatings and permit renewal for the wastewater treatment plant. That's a 5-year cycle to renew the operating permit, as well as to renew the mechanical integrity test on the deep injection well. Those fall hand in hand. Clear well filters, DSSU is a big holding tank facility that we need to do some upgrading back in 2018 with. Reline ponds. Our ponds, if you visited out there, and some of the Citizens Academy people were out there this year, all of our ponds are lined. They're, in effect, earthen holding tanks. Those liners are made out of a fabric that doesn't last forever. It does pretty well. One of the biggest killers of our lining in our ponds are alligators. In the dry season, when the pond level's down, the alligators go and dig through the lining and try to build nests, and we have to repair that. Occasionally, I'll send a story through information sharing where we've trapped or removed an alligator from the pond. That's the wastewater projects. Water projects. This Riverside Drive, that was being driven, water improvements being driven by the county doing some sidewalk work out there. Rather than let them build new sidewalks and us tear it up to do some line improvements, we were going to go ahead and do the line improvements. As far as I know, the last we've heard, the county work is on hold, so we're putting those line improvements on hold. So although we call it out, we still have $190,000 sitting in funding from a previous project that we have not even started doing anything with. At some point, Sharon's going to arm wrestle me and try to get that money back. I can feel it. Yeah, I can feel it. Water, the big project obviously is the Phase 1 groundwater. This year in 2018, we plan on spending for the RO phase water groundwater $3.8 million. The deep injection well itself is complete. They're moving the rig over to do the monitoring well, which is the last step, $4.3 million. And the CMAR part, we've plugged in $21.6 million in anticipation of getting bids out and getting that information back, and hopefully coming to you guys to pull the trigger on the actual construction sometime in 2018 of $7.8 million. Hendrickson Dam inspections, pretty self-explanatory. We have to do HBMP, which is hydrobiological monitoring, because of our surface water withdrawals. Reuse feasibility study, and a water treatment plant generator that we're doing this year that, as you will recall, in previous years, we had moved that out because I had hoped to dovetail that with the RO, but we got to a point where the RO got pushed out far enough where we're going to have about a 1 or 2 year need, or a gap in there between the RO construction and the generator needs. So we had to go ahead and pull the trigger on that this fiscal year.
But it'll be big enough to run everything, correct?
Well, this is the raw water, not the
Okay.
plants. This is the raw water. We were going to include as an add-on with the actual RO, we're going to have them repower raw water. And this is the raw water, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is, we're actually on our second backup generator, and we need to do stuff on pumps and controllers out there as well. And that project kicked off actually this week. They're out there physically working this week.
Questions for Tom? Nope. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, no unfinished business. We will get into new business development proposal for city-owned property on West Henry Street. Oh, Sharon's back.
Sorry, I was going to go back to
Oh,
the
sorry.
beginning
Yes,
question.
jumped the gun.
So sorry. If you would like to give staff direction
They can get their
today.
presentation going too, if somebody's talking about.
I'm sorry?
They're behind you. I was just saying they could get their presentation
can
loaded up if.
So the question is, would you want to discuss or revisit Utility Advisory Board's recommendation to delay the 4% rate increase for this fall?
I think we all nodded our heads that we were in, at least that's what I got.
I think that's
out of
our
the discussion.
Yes, yeah. So we need a motion.
Motion.
No,
No?
We're going to bring to you an
no.
ordinance.
Oh, we
As
need
long
an
as we,
ordinance change.
as long as we have direction, we'll proceed.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you so very much.
Thank you for being
Thank you.
ultra-conservative.
Yeah, right.
Okay, now,
Okay, what we're going to do now is have a presentation from two residents of the city of Punta Gorda. This is a resident-driven proposal. This is not a city council-driven proposal. And then we'll have a presentation of the proposal, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards.
Hi, my name is Julie Moriarty. I'm a full-time resident of Punta Gorda.
And I'm Julie McGillivray. I'm also a full-time resident.
This whole thing started when our vice mayor extended an invitation to citizens to come up with some kind of ideas on what to do with the land that's that's bounded by West Henry Maude and Olympia Streets. We looked at different ideas, different concepts. This is only one concept. It is just an idea, and that's I think it's important to note that at this stage. So what we did is we set forth some goals that we wanted to achieve. The first was to give consideration to the existing neighbors and avoid anything that would increase noise and or traffic above the existing levels. I think it's very important for us to consider, look at things in the sense of if we lived there, what do we want to see when we looked across the street? Second was the design had to work in harmony. Right now you have park area there, you have homes, so we kind of went into that direction. Be sensitive to the financial burden to the city created by developing public use space. So we came up with was, if we sold part of it, we could develop the rest, and the rest of it would be set aside, not set aside, but be used for permanent public use for all to enjoy. If the area was to be sold for homes, and whatever ends up there is not anything that I have any control over, but I was thinking in terms of homes. And I thought it needed to be separated from the master pumping station and be no closer than the existing homes, which is 250 feet right now. So that would keep, should keep any issues of that nature out of the picture. Create a design that would attract developers, because the idea is we want to get the maximum dollar for the section that's sold, so we have the most amount of money to put into the development of the park space, the paths, and the other things. Make sure that the public use space enhances the private space so as to increase its value and to get the maximum price. And it also would increase the value of the homes in the area too, so it would be a positive thing for all involved. Find a sweet spot where you sell the least amount of land and be able to develop the most amount for public use. This is a very difficult thing to do, but we made a shot at it. Then, of course, when it came to the dog park needed to be moved because the land that was going to be sold, the dog park was on that land. Then we would have to have some place where a new dog park could be built right in the same area, and while keeping the other dog park still in operation, and the new dog park would have to be built before the old dog park was closed. So the overall intent here, the goals that we had, was just to try to be sensitive to the neighbors, be sensitive to what the community needed, but and also not to burden the city with any concepts that we have. So at any rate, we did a video, and I will show you the video. Is there a mouse? Okay. The video is going to start, if you can see where the mouse is right there at the intersection of Olympia and the linear park path. The video is going to start there, and it's going to move in this direction. So we can go ahead and set the video up. And this is just one idea of many.
I like the music. Oh, that's cute.
my window pane, I'll think of summer days again and dream of you, and dream of you. This magic moment
No, no singing.
so different and so new was like any other until I kissed you and then it happened. It took me by surprise. I knew that you felt it too by the look in your eyes, sweeter than a wine, sweeter than a wine, softer than a summer night. Everything I wanna have, whenever I hold you tight. This magic moment, while your lips are close to mine, will last forever. Forever till the end of time. This sweeter than a wine, sweeter than a wine, softer than a summer night. Everything I wanna have, whenever I hold you tight. This magic moment, while your lips are close to mine, will last forever. Forever till the end of time. There is someone walking behind you. Turn around, look at me. There is someone watching your footsteps. Turn around, look at me. There is someone who really needs you.
They take this music and they're gonna
Here's
be
my heart in my hand.
So since 2004, 2005, since the hurricane, we have had a trend in this community that we've asked citizens, residents, volunteers to come forth and bring us ideas. And we've been very successful rebuilding this community with people coming forward and bringing us ideas.